I call the February 25th, 2025 Historic Preservation Board meeting to order. May we please start with a roll call?
Gabriel Jaroslavsky.
Here.
Kristen Kellogg.
Here.
James Murphy.
Present.
Gerald Bucksbaum.
Here.
Peggy Marker.
Here.
Let the record reflect that Kyle Waters, Amanda Skyer, and Jeffrey Sheldon are not present.
Thank you. Does the city staff have any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, we do. Good evening, Ana Maria Ponte, Assistant Development Services Director. We have a change regarding item number 7.4, case 24-110. The applicant has requested continuance for this case until the March agenda. Yes.
Thank you. Do any board members have changes to the agenda? If not, may we have a motion to approve the agenda as noted?
I move the board to approve tonight's agenda with exception of item 7.4 that moves to the March meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any changes to the minutes from the January 28, 2025 Historic Preservation Board meeting?
No.
If not, may we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the
Second.
meeting minutes of last month's meeting.
And we have a
Seconded.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. May we have the report of the Historic Preservation Planner, excuse me.
Yes, thank you very much. I have good news. So we have hired a new historic preservation planner. His name is Ruben Mendez. He will be starting actually next week, so I'm really, really excited. He is a great addition to the historic preservation group. He has a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois in architectural studies and has a master in historic preservation from the Tulane University. He has been working for the state for the last year, and is really excited to come back to West Palm. He did a brief period of as intern at the Preservation Foundation of Palm Beach, so he knows the area and was very excited to join the city.
Awesome.
So we're looking forward to have him as part of the team.
Thank you. We're excited. And thank you also to you and the other planners who have stepped in to fill the role in the absence of our formal preservation plan.
No problem. Happy to help.
Now it is time for remarks of the chairperson. The matters before us are quasi-judicial in nature. That means that we make our decision based on competent, substantial evidence that comes before us. We ask that you keep this in mind when making your comments. How this works is that the applicant will make a presentation up to 10 minutes or 15 minutes if there is a demolition. Afterwards, staff will make a presentation. After staff, we will open it up to public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The applicant may have a short rebuttal after the public speaks. To lead into this, we as board members need to disclose whether we have discussed the cases before us with anyone prior to tonight's meeting. So we will start with disclosure of ex parte communications.
As to the matter before us this evening, I, Gerald Bucksbaum, have not had ex parte communications, received written communications, conducted an investigation, made a site visit, nor received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to all matters on tonight's February 25th, 2025 Historic Preservation meeting, I, James Murphy, have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to all matters on tonight's agenda, I, Kristen Kellogg, have not had ex parte communications, have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to matter of all items in tonight's agenda, I, Gabe Jaroslavsky, have not had ex parte communications, have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to the matters before us this evening, I, Peggy Marker, have not had ex parte communications, received written communications, conducted an investigation, made a site visit, received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. We will now open the floor to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda, it is now time to do so. Is there anyone here to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move.
Well, I don't know, but I'm here because I want to voice my opposition for.
It's the item on the agenda?
Is it one of the properties on the list?
Yes.
Okay, so it is on the list. So then, okay.
And then if you'll just fill out a card, there are cards that are in the atrium for the case that you'd like to speak on, and give it to our board secretary. Then we'll know when you'd like to speak. Thank you. Okay. With no public comment for items not on the agenda, if you are wishing to speak on a case that is on the agenda, please stand so we may swear you in as a speaker.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. You may sit now. So our first item on the agenda is 24-109-3618 Spruce Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes.
May we please have the applicant?
Yes, I'm just gonna point out what the location. This is a request by Nicholas Hain of NRH Homes on behalf of BF Realty Oz Business LLC for construction of a single-family house at 3618 Spruce Avenue. The property is located within the Northborough Park Historic District, and it's at the corner of 36th Street and Spruce Avenue. So the applicant is here, and he will present, and then after, staff will proceed.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Viviana with NRH Homes, the applicant, Nicholas Haney. Today we're here to present our proposed new construction in 3618 Spruce Avenue. We've talked to the staff about all the requirements, and as far as setbacks, front, side, rear, and lot coverage, we meet with the requirements of for the proposed district. So as far as this is the right side elevation, here, front elevation, and here is the streetscape where we will be located. The house is on the right of Spruce. It's really one big house, which is blue, so this is the reference and the colors that we are presenting for this house. On 36th Street, which is around the corner, these are the houses that are next to it: 438, 436, and 418. Again, from our point of view, the colors and the design will match what it's surrounding in Spruce Avenue. The inspiration around the Northwood District is these houses. These are all in Spruce Avenue, the same street. These are lots very similar in size as well. This one is right across the street, actually, this one. And we've already talked to the staff as far as the recommendations, what we need to tweak for our design, and our architect is working on those designs. Again, as far as requirements, setbacks, we do fall under the mandatory requirements. It's all falls under roof, color, style, tweaking the design maybe a little bit, so it falls under, again, the style that we are proposing. But these are the recommendations from staff, and we would comply if we can go into the next hearing. And yep, here are the two main items recommended from staff that we do not comply. There's the other items we do comply. Is really relationship with materials and textures again, and the roof shaping. So we would just need, I guess, more time for our architect to tweak the design a little bit more so that it complies with these two items: materials, textures, roof, and design overall. Thank you.
Questions of the applicant? Okay, we'll have the staff report now. Thank you.
So the applicant already showed a little bit of what they are proposing. I would just want to mention as a background that previously on the site, a two-story mission revival structure existed. It was demolished around 2007, so that resource was lost. So the applicant acquired this property when it was already vacant. The design, as it was mentioned, as proposed, it complies with the zoning requirements for the code. So in terms of setbacks, floor area ratio, the design that they propose complies. So in this case, staff has some concerns primarily with the design, specific designs and details of the proposed structure. The applicant stated that the proposed design is inspired as an influence by the frame vernacular style. The staff considers the proposed structure is more a masonry vernacular variant style. And the applicant has a series of inconsistencies in the application in materials, and we have some concerns about some elements that are not really consistent, like the misplaced architectural details, the roof shape, the different planes on the elevation and this elevation, and therefore staff has prepared a list of recommendations to just have some modifications to the design. I'm not going to read all of them. They're included in the staff report. We think if, the architect, as the applicant said, they are willing to do some modifications to the design. The staff was written basically we're recommending denial based on the fact that they do not comply with the standards for the Secretary of Interiors or the special standards. But if the board is willing to recommend a condition that they continue and work with staff on the redesign, we are open to that. So that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. Questions of staff? All right, thank you. And is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, is there anything the applicant would like to add following staff's report? Okay, then we will move into executive session.
I think that staff is clear in the recommendations, and I think that we should continue this case to next month.
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion to defer the matter to March 25th, 2025.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We will see you next month. Our next case is 24-111, 409 45th Street. May we have the applicant presentation, please?
Good afternoon. 409 45th Street, lots 5 and 6, was a case presented last month. The main concerns from the staff and the board were the front of the house. How we were proposing a garage. We have removed the garage. There's going to be no garage. Therefore, the front of our house would look now like this. There's no garage. We've tweaked the design to fall under the vernacular style much better. The windows were changed. These are again the front. Then this will be the back. And the sides, we've also updated the design to fall under the proposed vernacular style. Left side elevation, we kept the porch, and the inspiration for the color has also changed. These are houses around the area. We would like to keep it in the cream light colors. And after having a meeting with staff, we proposed a few conditions for approval that we do accept. We are willing to follow with all 11 conditions proposed by staff, being the window coloring and the external, like the dimensions. They're all listed in the staff report, and the applicant, the owner, and the architect, we've all reviewed them, and we are willing to comply with all 11 of them to hopefully get the approval for lots 5 and 6. Again, the requirements for this zoning, as far as setbacks, they all complied last month, and they continue to comply this month. It was all a matter of tweaking the design with the garage that was the main concern, and the roof, which we've changed both to fall under the recommended style. Thank you.
Well, as it was mentioned, this case was presented last month to the board, and staff has some concerns, and the board also expressed some concerns. So the applicant worked very hard to try to address the board's concern and propose a revised design that complies with the zoning code, but also address the aesthetics concerns that were presented by the Historic Preservation Board. One of the main changes that we appreciate is the removal of the front-loaded garage. The structure was modified, and now the garage is removed. They're going to just have a driveway and allow the parking just as a driveway, and they added a bedroom. So it has 2 rooms facing the street, which is a great improvement. The revisions enhance the proposed design to reflect the elements of the frame vernacular that it was the request by the board and by staff. So they have addressed those comments. We have a series of still recommendations, additional recommendations to further enhance the design. I'm just going to mention the 2 biggest ones, and we have a series of them. The one that we would like to suggest as a recommendation of approval is adding 1 additional window on the bathroom on the north elevation to basically kind of break a little bit the solid wall that is on this elevation. It's a small window. I put it in as a high window, so it doesn't affect the layout of the house inside. Also, we are recommending the addition of an additional column on the front porch. So we are proposing a 4th column. This was kind of a tough one. We kind of review it back and forth because the design of the house does not allow to kind of split the windows. So the windows we add the 4th column, we'll space them on the porch, but then the window will be right in front of or the column will be right in front of the window, which is not ideal. But we think the benefit of having the rhythm of the porch outweighs the fact of the window. But we explore the option also to have just 3 windows but spaced differently, and that will also go in front of the window. So there's no way to have the right proportion of that. But I think this is a good option. I'm open to hear what the board comments are about it. We have 2 minor comments about the gable face roof bend that we just want to review the specific details of that once they advance on the design. Beyond that, staff is recommending approval with conditions based on the finding that the petition meets the required Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation in Section 9449C3, standards 9 and 10, and additional criteria in Section 9449C4 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations. We have 11 conditions of approval. I just mentioned the most important ones, but we think the rest will help to kind of refine the details of the proposed structure. And with that, we think it will meet the standards. That concludes the staff report.
Questions of staff? I have a question about the columns, the detailing of the columns, not just the placement. Is that something you reviewed as well? It says there's a stucco band on the columns.
We didn't put any conditions for that. We were more like looking at the spacing and the additional, but if you feel like we need to just revise the design, we can look into it.
Okay. I feel, given that they're such a prominent feature, that they should follow the traditional detailing. So have a traditional cap and base, and then be made of or clad in wood. I would like to add that as a condition. I think that it would really benefit the design. And are there any thoughts on the recommended additional revisions that staff mentioned?
For me, it can go either way. I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on the fourth column. I think that the issue of adding the fourth column, first is like Ana Maria said, falls in front of the window, but also in respacing it will make the door not to fall exactly in between them, so it's going to be off. So I don't know the benefit, if there is a real benefit on that. So I can go either on.
I kind of fall on the correct the column detail being more important than the addition of a fourth, based on how shallow the actual porch is, looking at the floor plan. And I imagine if that was your bedroom, how much that would drive you crazy to look out. So I'm more for getting the column architecture correct rather than adding it, although I do appreciate staff's idea of incorporating the fourth for the rhythm. But I think that leaving it as 3 would be better.
I agree.
Is there any additional conversation, or would someone like to make a motion?
You can make a motion. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 24-111 for new construction in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, specifically Standards 9 and 10, as well as the additional compatibility criteria set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Section 94-49 of the City Zoning and Land Development Regulations. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the Historic Preservation element of the Comprehensive Plan of the City of West Palm Beach, the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. The additional compatibility criteria set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Section 94-49 of the City Zoning and Land Development Regulations. The conditions include the following. One, all windows and doors shall have a white frame, excluding door number 1. 2, all sash windows shall have a vertical 3/1 light pattern. All windows shall have external dimensional or pyramid mountings. 3. All street-facing glass shall be clear glass only. All non-street-facing glass shall be clear glass or clear with low E glass. The bathroom windows may have obscure texture glass. 4. A fixed or awning window of approximately 29 to 38 inches in width and approximately 16 to 18 inches in height shall be installed in bath 1. The window shall have a vertical 3-light pattern. The window shall have trim to match the sash windows. 5. Window depth inset shall be adjusted as follows. A. The front face of the top sash window shall be approximately 1.5 inches from the exterior of the window trim. The front face of the lower sash window shall be approximately 4 inches from the exterior front of the window sill. Windows that are fixed or awning shall use the measurements as reference. These measurements as reference. B. The applicant shall provide the horizontal and vertical section for a typical window installation. 6. Door number 2 shall be a pair French door. 7. All shutters on the property shall be sized to cover the window opening as if the shutter would be operable. 8. The lap stucco siding detail shall have a smooth finish and feature a bevel profile with an approximately 5-inch reveal. 9. The gable face roof vent shall be verified by staff to be architecturally appropriate. 10. Front yard pave area shall comply with a maximum 25% permitted. And 11. The columns must have a traditional cap and base.
And shall be made of wood, not
Shall be
stucco.
made of wood, yeah.
Okay,
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Congratulations. Our next case is 25-02, 426 36th Street. May we have the applicant presentation?
I don't have your presentation. You gave it to me, I didn't save it. Sorry, it's not here. You don't have it? I'm sorry, the applicant sent me the presentation and for some reason I don't have it in my drive, so I'll have to go upstairs to get it.
Okay.
If we can just proceed with the next case.
Okay, so the next case is 25-03 for 3001 Spruce Avenue.
Thank you.
There it is. Good. Yep, understood. All right, very good. Start by thanking you all for your time to this matter. We're requesting a variance from the 4-foot height requirement for fences on Spruce Avenue to a 6-foot height. And I'm going to take you through some pictures of what we're proposing. But I want to start just by framing the reasons that we are asking for this request. So one of the reasons is we, of course, want to beautify the property. You guys may even be familiar with this one. It's our property. We love it. It's beautiful. And it is a grand property, so the size of it would be more befitting of a larger fence. But our major reason for this is that we've had multiple incidences of break-ins and other things in our property that have threatened my children and my wife, and I really feel it is necessary for the physical protection of my property. And those have been police reported, and those are in the record. We've had 5 incidences. We've had a robbery. We've had a break-in of our property. We've had an assault. And we've had a lot of things. And part of that is that this is probably the marquee property in that area. So it draws a lot of attention, positive but negative. So this is 3001 Spruce. It is actually built by the original designer of Northwood neighborhood, and it is a very nice property. You can see our currently existing fence that we have in front. The archway that's there, it actually is above 4 feet, but the baseline fence is 4 feet on the frontage. And what I would point out on this is that on one of those incidences, this fence was actually physically kicked down and broken into 4 pieces by the assailant. So this fence does not provide an adequate physical protection for the property. We need something with more robust pickets, but we want a picketed fence. We want full visualization. We want the neighborhood to be able to enjoy our wonderful property and see it very well. This is actually the guy that kicked it down that the police can't arrest because our video caught him 2 seconds after he walked through the gate with the noise on it, not in it, and he has menaced my family on a number of occasions. And I want to show you this video here, which illustrates that it's not out of character for Spruce Ave at all. The rule says that if the house faces Spruce, it's 4 feet, but otherwise it's 6. Now I imagine that exists to preserve the visibility of the historic homes. But when you take a drive up Spruce Avenue, oh, come on. Oh. Okay, so we're not going to be able to take a drive because the video is not loaded onto this. Yeah, I think it's because the primary video is on my laptop, not yours. You can see by the start of this, though, that more than 50% of Spruce Avenue has 6-foot fences along it. And most of them are visually unattractive wooden fences, very unlike what we plan to work with the board to make. A highly visible, highly attractive, high-quality fence that will enhance the neighborhood, not take away. But the reason that these, I'm imagining, are allowed to be is that these are the side yards that the houses face 29th or 30th or whatever. But it means that the great majority of Spruce Avenue has 6-foot fences already, more than half of it. So it's not inconsistent with the road to have a 6-foot fence, but I do believe that the purpose is really important, which is to maintain the beauty and the visibility of the property to share with the whole community, which we fully intend to do. So, that's basically the message that I want to give. This is why we're requesting it, and we really hope that you can understand that.
Questions of the applicant?
Sir, do you have images of the proposed fence?
Oh, yes. Actually, you have them in your thing, right? Yeah, the picketed fence. It's similar to what we have here, which is the pickets, but it's just a heavier gauge and taller.
It's
but
wrought.
okay. It's a picketed metal fence.
Is it wrought iron? Is it decorative? Are there
the goal
scallops or fleur de lis? Are there squiggles?
It would be aluminum, but in the wrought iron style. And we were very open to actually figuring out the details, because we still need to get an approval for the fence, of working with the city on what would be most beautifying. But our idea was that it would be wrought iron like this, a little bit taller, probably with similar finials to match the style that's there, maybe not with the little decorative things in between, but something else that suited the style. But sort of similar to this, only with a more robust metal and a little bit taller of a height that would encompass the property.
How much wider would the pickets
What,
be?
you, what, the, yeah.
It's about like this. I think, was it about 4 or 6 inch gaps between them, like that. The difference for a heavier level one with the thickness is not that much thicker in actual, geometry. These are very thin. So the bigger ones are probably 50% bigger in actual width, but the metal within it is much, much more. It's like, 5 times as much.
But the spacing between the pickets is going to stay the same?
It's going to stay the same, correct.
Well, I'm only one vote. I absolutely am theoretically supportive of your request for increased height. I think the mansion, the estate, a higher fence is actually architecturally commensurate with that, I believe. But I think the design is going to be very, very important for me for my affirmative vote. I'd like to see details of that proposed fence because all fences are not created equal. But I'm very, aside from it, I believe that it's commensurate with the grandeur of the house that which you're securing. I think that the predominance of non-transparent wooden fences up and along the immediate area along Spruce makes it not out of character. In fact, maybe 6 feet isn't high enough. But I would need to see that to see if there's horizontal rails. Does it escalate for the gates? Is it one gate? Is it 2 gates? Is it swing in, out? So there's a lot of details that I would need to see before granting relief from the code requirement. That's just me.
One other quick question. It would follow the same line as far as the way it curves and
That's
all of
right.
that? Okay.
That's the idea is to replicate the currently existing
Just replace
lines.
it,
Yeah,
literally.
replace it. But this current one doesn't have, it doesn't complete behind the hedges, and we would just extend it right behind the hedges. You wouldn't even see it, but it would be there. Yeah, and I mean, we're very, I do have, I just don't have with me the details of what we were thinking to do because it wasn't, we weren't putting that part of the proposal, but we're extremely open to working to make it what everybody believes would be the most beautiful version. I mean, and we're happy not to spare an expense on it. We're going to get really nice stuff.
Okay, thank you. We'll have the staff report now.
Good evening, everyone. Ann Volsey for the record, planner. So the applicant did a good job presenting what they wanted. Just to give a brief background. So the site is known as the Orrin and Elizabeth Randolph House. The request is for a 2-foot variance within the front yard. They're required to be at 4 feet within the first 25 feet along Spruce. So basically to improve security and address ongoing safety concerns, safeguard the property from further damage and reduce its vulnerability to unauthorized access. I wanted to show here, so it's proximity to Broadway, which is a mixed-use district having commercial and a little bit more of foot traffic, and I also explained that within the staff report. So here is the survey of the property. Here I have highlighted in red the front setback, so the area that would have to stay at 4 feet per the code. Here's a marked up survey of what the applicant is requesting. In the blue, we have the fence, and the green would be the landscaped area to screen the fence from public view. and provide that vegetation along Spruce. And yellow is the visibility triangle, which has to remain unobstructed for, cars coming along that corner, trying to make that turn. And here it just shows everything overlaid together. The front yard and that portion that falls within that front yard would be the variance area. And here are some site photos. So the applicant's justification outlines specific instances of break-ins and vandalism, illustrating the heightened risk faced by the owner and surrounding properties, and how the existing barriers have proven inadequate in preventing criminal behavior. So therefore, staff is recommending approval with conditions as it meets the variance standards found in section 94-38D6 of the ZLDRs, and that the conditions are that the variance shall only apply to the proposed fence. Visibility at the intersection of Spruce Ave and 29th Street shall be unobstructed per ZLDR section 94-305E, and all portions of the 6-foot fence within the front yard shall be screened from view with landscaping, except at the intersection where visibility is required. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions of staff?
Okay, thank you. The survey that you submitted that was marked up indicates where the red, my drawing is red, where it ends, it then picks up with an existing metal fence and existing wood fence, but the survey doesn't identify the height of those fences. And is that a chain link fence that it terminates into, or the 4-foot high fence that they're choosing to replace? So my question was about securing the entire perimeter.
At this time, the request was just for the portion in the front yard. That's what they would need the variance for, because everything else could be done through the permitting process.
And outside of the red, along 29th Street, once you're outside of the front yard, a fence can achieve the 4 to 6 feet height as a matter of right.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm sorry, one more question. You're proposing that they set it back a certain distance from the front property line so that they install hedging material in front of the fence?
Yes, and they actually have landscaping existing, as you saw in their photos and such. So it's just to maintain that and provide that extra screening for other properties that would say, oh, they have a 6-foot fence, where the landscaping would come in and screen that from public view.
But is the intention to completely conceal the fence with a hedge? Because that would defeat the purpose if we want to have a decorative fence, right? So if we enforce the fence be decorative, then why put in a tall hedge? I understand that we want a hedge, but maybe a 4-foot hedge for a 6-foot fence should
And then
suffice.
the code also allows for the landscaping to be much taller than the fence.
Okay.
I mean, I would also say the design of the fence in that semicircular portion, if that's the cast iron portion, and then the rest of it can transition to something else because it's behind the landscape. And also just then you could get something really wonderful for what's visible versus doing like a cast iron fence for that amount of length is so cost prohibitive, for a lot of people. So I think that there could be kind of a middle ground for how you approach it, but I do agree with Mr. Murphy that the design of it would be required for me to be able to vote on the variance itself.
Okay, so the variance is for the height, not for the architectural style.
I think we understand that we're nervous about approving, I believe we're nervous about approving a variance for height without understanding what the architectural implications of that increased height would be.
So I would think that if the condition would have said that the fence has to be exactly the same design that is today, then probably it's a different scenario. But there is nothing that says that the fence will be a decorative fence like it's today, right?
The same design, but he can do a stronger material, yeah.
I'm actually comfortable with that if you guys are, and I think Ms. Kellogg brings up a very valid point that we should really focus our design energies and the money on that central piece, that the semicircular nature must remain, and because it promotes the transparency into the magnificent house and can really be commensurate with if there's any ironwork on the existing house. And the rest could probably just be a lower, less designed vertical picket throughout the rest of it. Okay. But we're just granting height without seeing the elevation of what we're granting? That's what you're asking us?
So when I discussed with the applicant and we were talking about what was being proposed, it's for the request is for a variance from the height. So it's not there's nothing necessarily in the code for the architectural. So, as far as HPB goes, you guys will look at some of the styles and we would make the determination at the permit level, whether that is, architecturally appropriate or not. If it's an aluminum rail fence or if it's a chain link fence, then we require them to have the landscaping in the front, so on and so forth. The one they did provide us was very ornate, and staff had recommended that, okay, the portion that we're reviewing is for the height, so that's why it wasn't included as part of the presentation.
Can't we do a conditional approval, though?
Is the existing fence original or is new, or when was done? When was installed?
It's not original. It's been there for, and I can answer your other questions. It has a 6-foot fence on the north side and all that stuff, but it is not original. It's probably been there for about 30 years.
You already have conditions of approval on this. Do you guys want to see the design brought back to look at?
Or at least we can put a condition of approval that the center portion shall replicate the existing design.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that there is space to improve there.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I would say.
I think we could do better.
If that's what you wanted, I would almost rather bring it back to you. We want it to be wonderful, and we want it to be what you guys would be very happy with, right? And I actually think the design we have you would, but I don't have it here today to give to you, so.
Yeah, and I also feel like when we've approved variances in the past, like for a pool in a front yard or in a setback, we're seeing the design of the pool while we're looking at that variance. So to me, it seems like there is a link, traditional, I don't know how I should word that, but it seems like there is a precedent for a link between looking at the design that's proposed in conjunction with the variance. So I would love to see the design that you're proposing. I think it would be very exciting to have something really beautiful there.
Okay, so maybe the condition is I'll bring it back to you guys and show you what you want.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I still do need to ask for public comment on this case. So is there any public comment on this case? All right, seeing none, we'll move into executive session, which I think we've had a lot of comment already.
Is anyone not supportive of the variance? So we can make a motion to approve it and then add a condition that the final design be brought to a future meeting date for final design detail?
Why we don't postpone it in next month? Just the whole thing together.
I wouldn't approve it until you see the
Don't
design.
approve it.
I mean,
So we'll
Gonna continue the next
Yeah, so
month.
just
Yeah.
just continue. And trying to find the applicant.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Is next month enough time for you? So, okay, so the date certain would be next month for who would ever like to make that motion.
Okay, I motion to continue to the March 25th meeting with the design direction provided at this hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. We'll see you next month. We're excited to see what you have. And with that, are we ready to go back to case number 25-02?
Apologies for that. Misplace of a presentation on the drive.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Russell Rosicki, architect of Design R Architects, representing the interest of Emily Gutierrez, who purchased this property. This is what I would call kind of a 1 3/4 wide lot. It's 175 feet across. And just so you can see placement of things, you have kind of a pool that once was. It's since been demolished and the grate has been infilled. There was a non-contributing structure which the board had approved previously for demolition. So what is remaining today is the house as you see it, which is historically contributing. It's address number 418, but the application lists 426 36th Street. So there's a few address numbers associated to this large parcel. It is one large contiguous lot currently. What we are requesting in this application is a splitting of lots along non-platted lines to relocate the existing contributing structure. It's a 1928. It's labeled as a Spanish mission. I would actually call it more Spanish eclectic architecture. It's a single story. What makes it unique is kind of the juxtaposition of different styles upon it. I would say it's very unique to this neighborhood and West Palm Beach in general at large. Some notable doctors once lived here. In a future application, should the board agree with our presentation for relocation of the historic home, we would be proposing an addition to the structure, which would be set back from the primary facade considerably, and then a detached garage accessed by the alleyway. And if I can just bring your attention over here to where the cursor is, there's actually kind of a build out of the side of the road here where kind of the grass and connecting sidewalks from one side to the other. There's a unique occurrence here, as you can see, where a driveway cannot be located within 25 feet of this point. So it makes kind of the eastern side of this lot a little more challenging to access, which relates to our application as we request to relocate the historic home west so that this lot can be more usable. Here's the existing property survey. And as I mentioned, the structure at the south has been demolished. The pool has already been infilled. What we're proposing is two separate lots. One is 110 feet wide. The other is 65 feet wide. We chose 65 feet as our dimension to allow for a detached garage, again accessed from the alley. And the structure in its full perimeter, and I have photos to show you shortly. The historically contributing structure would be entirely relocated. There wouldn't be any components that are, call it original, that will not move over with the home. It moves over approximately 39 feet 1 inches to the west, and then 2 inches south in order for the front yard setback to comply. These are our zoning tables. This is a picture very recently taken of the west side of the home. And you'll see in our application here, we're requesting to demolish this roof over patio, which I have found to not have been original for a few reasons. This is a picture of the back of the house. I just want to bring your attention to this small portion with this flat roof projecting from it. This is not original to the home. You can see the studs, the sheathing, the rafters, the roofing was all different. So kind of the whole block as you see it, that's a little taller is the original structure. The home, as you can see around the perimeter of the windows, had a lot of jalousie windows. If you can imagine in 1928, obviously air conditioning wasn't like a thing. Evaporative cooling was considered for this house. I have a few pictures to share with you of that as well. This is a view from the east side looking west. So what you're seeing is a comparative floor plan where we're requesting to demolish that roof over patio with the 4 columns at the west side. And the existing home in its entirety is to remain as you see it. You have the comparative elevations, right? Nothing changes on the front elevation except the fact that it's moving. On the west elevation, that roof over patio gets removed. There is kind of a little shed structure here on the east elevation that will also be removed. And you're seeing kind of the south elevation where that roof over patio, a portion of it gets removed. Our foundation would be a slab on grade with a spread footing, and the slab would turn down to the spread footing, which is very much consistent with the existing home today. A large majority of the home, with the small exception of one portion of the home has a crawl space, but we would, for simplicity and ease of relocation, carry the whole structure and set it on one slab that's level and uniform across its entire base. You're kind of seeing a basic cross section here. The home has a flat roof. We would not be increasing the ceiling height or the roof height or the parapet height. These are all existing dimensions that would remain. So again, I just want to hone in a little bit closer on this to just show to the board my understanding that I don't believe this is an original element to the home that we're requesting to demolish. So when they placed this roof over patio, they kind of clipped off some architectural features, as you can see in these 2 illustrations, which come off of the top of the pilaster columns. And originally, there was some flashing at windows, and you wouldn't necessarily have needed that flashing at the top of the window if there was a roof over that patio. So this had seen more direct weathering when it was originally built. You're seeing here to the top left how they clipped the fireplace where this ledger was placed, and they had an architectural detail that kind of just got cut out for that ledger to find its place. This is a close-up here of a rafter tail, so imagine looking at the roof overhang, standing kind of by a column at the top, and you're seeing plywood, you're seeing kind of joists next to newer sheathing. It probably, if I were to guess, was built 10 or so years after the home was originally built, and it was built very shoddily, which is also why I do believe it's falling apart, and honestly, it couldn't be relocated if we tried. You're seeing some posts that were added to it. This is not even the way a beam would have been treated at this point in time. And what has happened over the years, I guess through some leaks, they had capped parapets with some flashing. And then here's kind of a few more close-up images just to prove the point that this wasn't the original structure. Roof over patio here. You even have gutters, which one might looking at this home at first glance, you might say, oh, look, the texture matches, right? Matches the original home. Well, no, not really. They just kind of came over it and sprayed everything with this texture to match. They did a good job, I guess, matching the original home with the new textures, but you can see they kind of applied it over a leader here. So you can see that this leader was never original to the structure. It's aluminum. Okay, and then staff requested us to kind of get more close-up photos and talk about the tile, both at this patio space and also at the front entry area that's covered by the dome. I don't believe this to be original tile based on kind of where the wall was previously and how it swelled over time to where it was installed later, and the tile was then cut out to match the swelled corner points that may have received water over time. So the tile was obviously an after the fact installation. These pictures are very recent, so this home has an interior demo permit that has been approved. And what I just want to bring your attention to is kind of they have these little scoop outs and galvanized trays and galvanized pan flashings that come into the wall between the studs. One might think that is original, but it's actually not. They cut through the stucco to make that occur. In this bottom left photo here, that would be where that line of the roof starts at that roof over patio on the west side of the home. What you're seeing is an evaporative cooler, which is like what we know as a swamp cooler, typically used in the Southwest, dry environments rather than humid environments. They don't really perform well in humid environments, but it's kind of cool just for the board to see it because this has kind of its own little pulley system and motor that drives this evaporative cooling thing, which pulls air in through a large vent in the ceiling. But that was introduced in the 30s sometime when evaporative coolers were cool. And I imagine this home was very hot, and that's when they added that roof over patio at the west that we will be demolishing, requesting to demolish. So here's a letter from the highway department stating that 25 feet must be kept from that kind of sidewalk that jets out at the street, again, making ingress and egress to the front of the property rather difficult or challenging on the east side, which led us to our decision to relocate the home west. As you can see here. And then I just have an email I just want to read if I do have more time remaining since there is a demolition involved. And specifically a relocation here. So George from Biltmore Construction, the owner, I requested him to write me an email so that the board can feel a little more confident in the thought process of relocating a historic structure, just because that's not an easy task, right? It's an existing wood frame home with stucco, and things are very, old and in their current position. But he says, Russ, we've been in contact with Brownie companies whom I've worked with in the past and is most likely going to move this building for us. We are currently halfway through our interior demo to expose the roof and wall framing, interior demolition permit number 250-10727. Once demo is completed, we'll be walking through with Brownie and other movers so that they can determine how to best pick the structure up to move it. Since the structure is wood framed, we anticipate cutting the walls free at the bottom plate, and additional bracing and framing will be installed to maintain the structure's stability. Ledgers then run inside and outside of the exterior walls and bearing walls within the home, and a grid of steel beams is then fished underneath the added ledger boards. Then jacks and cribbing is placed to sequentially lift the building in small increments to a workable height where wheeled dollies can be placed under steel I-beam grids. At this point, the building can be pushed and pulled into its final position. The process is reversed to set the building down onto its new foundation. Thank you.
Questions of the applicant?
So you just had in the screen the conditions of approval. That's in the staff report. So I would think that you agree with those conditions, right?
Yes, I have reviewed them, and my client agrees with them, as do I.
Okay. So, but what are we approving today? My understanding is that we are approving just the relocation.
That is correct.
Nothing else.
That
no
is
the
correct.
demolition, no the renovation, nothing.
That is correct. Because to relocate before we could design for a renovation and addition, we'd have to have this board approve the relocation of the home.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the intent to subdivide this and sell, like it says proposed vacant lot, so that you're proposing that to be where you're gonna do the addition, not to sell that as a separate parcel?
Great question. So there's two parts to this process, to this proposal. One is the renovation and addition to the contributing structure after it's moved. That would be a separate COA application, which we would come to. We have every intention, and we've kind of already thought through it, having heard the board's comments on our previous applications and many others, with how to approach that project. And then for the newer, larger, I should say newer lot, but it's really just a divided lot at this point, that would receive a design for a new home with a separate COA application, which would be independent of the historic COA application, because in order to request a lot split along non-platted lines, we would have to have the historic relocation approved first before we go for that application.
Mm-hmm. And a follow-up question. So with moving this, and now you have the new lot's 65 feet, is
That's
that correct?
65,
So
yes.
as far as all of the setbacks and everything else, you're still in compliance with that new smaller lot size?
That's correct. Even with our future intentions in mind, which I'm happy to describe just again for a simpler understanding in terms of preservation, the second story that we plan to propose over the existing historic home would occur considerably back, probably along the line of where it says the word relocated, and then follow the perimeter footprint of what is here. And then we would have a detached structure, which would be for a garage to be accessed from the alley, no front-facing garage.
And that alley, is that open to public traffic now?
It is. Well, I say open public, but it's more private, privately used. People put their garbage pails in there and...
Right, but in other words, the city's not going to say you can't access this garage, like the garage.
Oh, no, yeah, we've already confirmed with Highway that we can have access to a garage from that alley.
And then as far as the relocating the building, the company that you spoke with, Brownies, they're confident that they can relocate it without any damage to the structure?
So these people relocate buildings, and that's all they do.
Yep.
And I do defer to the expertise of the contractor who has been involved in relocation projects with these subcontractors in prior instances. But I've seen homes in this, city of West Palm Beach get relocated miles with success.
Yep.
But I think
homes that are in this condition?
Yes, I say a lot of the homes are in this condition, in my experience. But what I can say is, thankfully, it's not moving far. You don't have to worry about transportation, really. It's on the same lot. Initially, I was contacted to, look into possible demolition of the structure, and I advised against that. Then the thought was, hey, maybe a lot could be purchased within vicinity of this neighborhood. I advised against that to kind of relocate on the property. We even explored arrangements of adding on to this home. It just became so substantial to the point where it made more sense to kind of keep it more, I'd say, historic in nature on a smaller lot, which is consistent with this neighborhood. In this case, I'd say preservation is warranted by relocating it and keeping it on a smaller lot.
I have a couple of questions. Well, have you relocated a home?
Me personally, no. What I did actually say and make a request to the contractor and to the owner is that I want to be able to see it before anything is picked up with the ledgering that they describe.
Yeah. Has the contractor relocated a home before?
Yes.
Okay. We have relocated homes on their site, like to raise them up.
Okay.
And there's a few elements on the structure that I'm just concerned about off the bat from my own experience for the stabilization of that. And well, I'm not going to speak to the board vote. I would just be very, very careful about any kind of element that protrudes from the rest of it, right? Whether it's a chimney, you have columns that aren't really anchored to anything else. You have that like beautiful dome element. All of these things, like the wall that comes off the side, all of these things are very, very difficult when you're talking about even just picking it up and doing a new foundation and putting it back down. They are very, very fragile. So you have to do everything you can to stabilize them or to remove them and then put them back, right? Don't expect to be able to actually just pick up everything because it doesn't really, work that way.
Yes.
You also mentioned, I think, that it's currently a slab on grade and you're putting it back on a slab on grade?
Yeah, it's primarily a slab on grade. I'd say 75% of it is a slab on grade.
And you verified that it's a slab on grade. It's just very...
Oh, yeah. It's unique, but you can see it as evidenced in some of these photos, I hope, where the tile is... I have the pictures on my phone, but the Zillow listing also shows tile along all the floors. I know there's tile on floors that could be subfloors as well, but no, that floor is rock solid.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a portion of the home which did have a crawl space, which is on the compass direction east side. So it's a portion right where the cursor is, and then you primarily have the full L shape of all slab on grade. There's no crawl space fence on, call it the north, the west, or the south perimeter. It's only on the east perimeter.
I haven't personally worked in relocation of houses, but I definitely have worked in conjunction with the Brownie Structural Moving Company in my time in Miami Beach. They moved older and bigger houses that I bore witness to, and they are absolutely the best down here. I'm going to say something that I don't want to alarm you. I'll talk to staff about it. I'm generally uncomfortable with the application. I kind of challenge what you said about the preservation. It's more important to preserve the house, albeit on a smaller site. I worry about what's coming, and what I mean by that is, by my math, looking at the width of the parcel, the new construction should have the smaller parcel. And the relocated house doesn't need to be relocated. It could stay where it's at and could have a substantial addition that this board would probably be very favorable in granting any leniencies from. But to move it 39 feet to the west, to put it on the smaller of the two parcels, and us not knowing what's coming with today's newer construction and problems with infill that we see monthly, I think would be disruptive to the development pattern of the site on the platted lots that you're seeking to do non-platted nature. So I'll talk with the legal team and with staff, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm finding I'm uncomfortable with the application.
Thank you for your comment. If you don't mind, I have a second to respond to that. If we just look at where the home is situated on this survey, if I can ask you, where do you think, you were saying, hey, you could either add on to it. I would say, where would you add on if it's an existing home, receiving an addition? The addition, this is a very large lot, 175 feet, right? And you start to add west or you start to add east, or it just becomes in question with obviously the size of the lot and the zoning rights that someone would have upon purchasing and developing a property, still with consideration to the neighborhood. I mean, yes, it can be done, but when you think about relocating the home and ingress and along platted lines, 50 feet is where this dash line is currently. You wouldn't really be able to keep the home where it is without splitting the lot along unplatted lines. So there'd be no lot split opportunity if the home wasn't relocated. In the sense, because you have ingress issues with the highway department and 25 feet maintaining from this dimension.
So, I'm sorry, maybe I was vague.
Okay.
I wasn't against the lot split application. I'm not even sure we have purview over that. What I was suggesting in my discomfort was that the relocated structure is getting the short parcel, the smaller parcel, and that with minimal, if any relocation, you could do your division of lot and have a 65-foot wide lot that's vacant and free and clear for the construction.
No, I'm sorry to say that's not possible. If you look at the 25-foot dimension from where my cursor is, that is where your ingress for your driveway has to start. That would put you beyond the lot of where you currently are, which would force you into relocating the home. You'd be in the same predicament. There is no...
Can't you access from the alley?
To the primary entrance of the property, as a primary entrance from the property, I mean, I think a driveway is customary to be on the front of the street.
You can't do it because of the median?
That's correct. The
Been
highway
moved
department.
before. We've had
Because
an application.
there is a
come to-
street that is coming down onto that sidewalk.
That's a
If you look at the site plan.
city-owned easement for a road along that sidewalk. That is correct. And here's their letter in response. We would request that you keep 25 feet clear of the edge of that median.
I'm sorry, I'm confused because we've actually had an application come before this board where they paid to move the median.
Yeah, and that is that answer is from Beans.
Don't
which
forget
is-
you haven't heard the staff presentation
Okay.
yet.
Well, with that in mind, I think that we should move things along and hear the staff presentation.
Thank you so much,
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Ana Maria Ponte, Assistant Development Services Director for the record. We already talked about the house and the two structures. And you heard what the plans for the applicant are, so I'm not going to go over that. So it's very simple. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. The conditions are just documenting the interior and the exterior of the house very well. So when we have the move, we can be sure that everything is preserved accordingly. And just connect the house with a sidewalk to the front to maintain the pedestrian connectivity. And some additional pictures of the materials of the covered patio. And regarding the stucco, the replacement stucco. But we are comfortable with the move. We think that the standards for the relocation, we don't see any of the standards listed, as in none of the conditions that are listed as a standard exist in this proposal that will substantiate the denial of the relocation. The structure will continue to exist within the general setting of the Northborough Park Historic District and within the 400 block of the 36th Street. So we don't see any non-compliant for the standards. Basically, it's kind of written in a funky way. It's like none of these conditions exist that substantiate the recommendation for denial. That concludes the staff presentation. And I can leave these ones up for you. So.
I have a question, and I don't know if this is for the city attorney, but I know when we have to relocate like banyan trees or something, we have to get a bond or something like that to make sure that that's protected. Is there any opportunity for us to somehow require that the house is protected so that it can't just be kind of moved and it didn't make it, you know?
Yeah, I was actually, it's interesting you mentioned that because I was thinking about requiring a bond. I'm just not sure what you'd be bonding for. You know, James, does that make sense to bond a house when you're moving it? And what would the bond be insuring? I mean,
Well, I think it would be already established in the master fee schedule. I don't think we would arbitrarily be able to require, but I think she was asking, is there a bond for?
I don't know if there's a bond, but I was wondering if that's something that should be considered.
I mean, we approved before relocations of
Yeah,
homes from
we have.
one neighborhood to the other neighborhood, and I don't think that we ever required a bond.
Yeah, I don't think it's required, but I was thinking about that too. But I don't think it is required.
It is, no, we don't have a requirement in our code for the bond for the relocation. I mean, at least that I was able to find.
Yes, but other municipalities
Do.
have required it, which is probably part of where the question's coming from, so that there's a repercussion if the resource is lost.
Right,
So-
like that
so
there's
is
a
that-
true effort to save the home, not just,
So that's the purpose of the bond as just kind of a incentive not to destroy the house when you're moving it. Got
That's
ya.
my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Unfortunately, no, we don't have that requirement.
When I've dealt with them, it was already part of, I don't know that it was the code, but it was already a policy that was in place and a requirement of the, in the case that I'm thinking of, it was just lifting the structure to a higher finished floor elevation. Any other questions of staff? Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this case? For this one? All right, seeing no public comment, we will move into executive session. Mr. Murphy, would you like to pick up with where you left off?
I'm not sure, and I certainly didn't mean to complicate it, but I just have been in the development community long enough to see when these sort of resources are salvaged and relocated, it's typically, preservation is kind of lowercase preservation. And with this application, I just question the need for relocating it, the extent of the relocation, to make way for a vacant site that we all know what it is likely to look like. And that size lot for new construction is out of character with the plat of this block for new construction. I just kind of strongly feel that way. They're not even subdividing it in a King Solomon way with 50-50. It just kind of seems a little greedy to me without seeing what's coming. And looking at the extent of the condition, I'm not sure that it can be moved without significant damage to its physical integrity. Number 4. But I don't know.
wondering if we could do a continuance and request to have the house mover come or supply testimony or something in writing that they're confident that they can move the house without damaging it?
Or I'd like to see a minimum building envelope on the minimum size lot on the vacant portion. Then maybe the house doesn't need to be moved 39 feet at all.
So we approve in the past partial demolitions of houses where the contractor went ahead and completely demolished the house. And then the applicant came back to the board, and this didn't happen once, happened more than once, came back to ask for forgiveness. And there is nothing we can do at that time. So it's kind of the same thing,
And if you have questions about the division of that lot, you can always ask somebody from, I don't know, whether it would be Angela or somebody who could say whether it could be subdivided the way Mr. Murphy was suggesting.
I'm trying to look what is the minimum size, lot size, like width for that district, and see if they could split it on two. The 110 could be split it on two.
Because I can't imagine that a median is.
No.
I mean, they will have to just work on relocating that median with the city if that's possible.
I mean, they're proposing the lot at 65 feet, so we know the minimum is at least 65 feet because you can't move it onto and create a non-conforming lot, I assume.
But what is the minimum? Can
Right.
it be 50?
What's the zoning for it? SF 14C what? Does the applicant know? SF 14C what?
I'll just show you, and I have a zoning table I can share.
C2. So the minimum lot
It's 50 feet.
width is 50 and
That's
the
correct.
lot area is 5,000.
And if I just say really quick, any splitting of this lot would be acceptable to us if the 25 feet is considered from the median. Any dimension would be acceptable to us.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a C3 or a C2?
C2. I just checked the zoning on the tab that they have pulled up for us.
The C2 has a lot width of 50 feet, apparently. It's SF14C2. Has a lot width, minimum lot width of 50 feet. Or 50,000 square feet minimum area.
I mean, that's kind of what was jumping out at me, that looking at the survey, there's 25 feet and then 50 feet before you even enter the realm of being near the existing structure. So they could give a 75-foot lot free and clear without moving it.
So there is no science to this. So basically, it's just an opinion versus another opinion, right? So what is right? Is having a 175 feet lot in a street where all the other lots are 65 or 50 or whatever it is, or subdividing it, but there is no rule, I think, that the board can use as a fact to determine where the house should go and what the size of the lot should be. So I don't know, as a matter of fact, how we can decide that.
Right, but I think we can,
Except deny the relocation.
or request at least to speak to whoever's going to move the building, that they can assure us that it will be successful, that the building can withstand moving.
Assurance is going to be impossible.
I would assume that the moving the house is going to be successful. I mean, I've seen much more complicated 2-3-story buildings relocated, right? So I would assume that, but yeah, I mean, that is not an assurance.
Yeah. I mean, I think we know that the building itself can be moved. It's the character defining features that aren't very stable, for this house. And that, I mean, also something to consider is that this house is a significant resource for this historic district because there aren't a lot of this kind. And to lose this resource and to put it at risk unnecessarily, I think is something that our board needs to consider. Can we see I'm sorry, I don't remember what they were called, but the list that you put up right when you finished your staff report? Thank you.
So Ana Maria, Vince that wrote that email back, he's engineering, right? his city engineer.
Vince
But who-
Noel?
Huh?
Vince Noel?
Yeah, Vince. So, but this is not him, right? I mean, somebody else will decide if we can move that medium or not.
Yeah, it's not Vince. It will have to be the traffic engineering.
Correct.
It has to be determined if it can be moved, what is the location. I mean, it probably is centering that block, so it makes sense to move it, or will have to be removed totally to provide access to a new lot. But we did not discuss that with the engineer department at all.
Thank you.
I mean, so what we're talking about is number 4, that the building can't be moved without significant damage to its physical integrity. You're talking about the characters.
The character.
Right. I mean, if you guys are looking at, if you want to consider denying it, I think you have discussed 1 and 4. Those are your two points that you seemingly may disagree with staff. That
Could we maybe defer the matter to get more information about the median and the potential different geometry of the proposed division of lot that may not require the movement of the house?
I mean, we can also request, I mean, if you are feeling like, ask the applicant to bring the mover to just give a little bit more comfort level that they can do special elements, like special actions to preserve those defining characters that are at risk with the move.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the building mover came, they would need to come with a stabilization plan of those elements. Like, just them telling us they can move the house doesn't do a lot to address our concerns. I think we need a specific plan to be able to retain those features, even if it's, you know, taking the column down before it gets moved and putting it back. But it sounds like we're moving towards a continuance of this case based on what everyone on the board discussed. Does the applicant need more clarity? Does staff need more clarity on a continuance if that is the direction of the board?
So if I can just restate what you are concerned, like one is the size of the proposed second lot and what it could come on that lot in comparison with the character of the street. So you would like to see if we can split it. If they split off in 3 parcels instead of 2, it's an option. Or, and that will be relocating the structure, or if splitting it in a different way where the structure remains on its location and having the 2, maybe if the numbers work, there's 2 sides on the other side, or just a smaller one on the east side and that's it.
I think it's 2 parcels, not 3.
Yeah, for
2
sure.
parcels, not 3.
Absolutely.
And I think Mr. Murphy's concern was that it would be out of character with the neighborhood because,
Size of the
right, the size of the lot that the historic house would be on would be tiny or smaller in comparison to the
new structure.
right.
new structure on a 110-foot wide lot.
Right, which I think having walked down that street more than once, I would agree.
Yeah, the pattern of development for that kind of platting would be atypical and inconsistent. Understood.
And then on the other side is the stabilization plan for if it is moved, or it be moved, the stabilization plan to show how to preserve those defining characters, defining features.
And finding out about the median as
Right.
part of this conversation. All right, may we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to that, that the matter be moved to the March 25th meeting, and the applicant return and staff return with the direction that was provided as part of this hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. We will see you next month. Okay, our next case is case number 25-05 for 816 3rd Street. May we please have the applicant presentation?
Good afternoon. My name is Christina Anthony with Turn to Construction, representing the client Lamont Humber with Signet Foundation. Today we are discussing a site that was with the CRA. It's in partnership with them. The client was awarded this property to build a 1,400 square foot modular structure. It did get awarded to him, and then they did go through the commission process. The client also did go through the process of providing the designs to the committees prior to submitting for today's application. Out of the 6 recommendations from the staff, all we can meet except for the last 2, which is 5 and 6. Being earth tone brick should be added to wrap around the structure, slightly to side on the north and west elevations. In the neighborhood, we did notice that there are no other homes with brick, and so we would request that we could stick with stucco and not have brick at all. The purpose of that recommendation on our side is this property is a CRA workforce housing project, and the client is concerned with cost of wrapping the property with brick. That would deem the project's budget increase. The next line item that we do have concerns with that was recommended by the staff is the west elevation option to be selected shall be the one window, more than one window. This is a modular structure, so it's the property, we're not allowed to add extra infrastructure to it, so we can only use the amount of windows that we have. However, in the other line items where they do talk about the types of windows, so if you look at the very front, how it has that 3-layer, we are able to make the changes to have that as just one big window. So that was one of the items that was recommended that we're able to proceed with. So we're able to change the size of the windows, but not the increasing of the windows. And that is our review here for today.
Questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. We'll have the staff report now, please.
Again, N. Volsey for the record, planner. As stated by the applicant, this property was vacant for a number of years. It was also owned by the CRA from 2010 until its sale in 2024. It is in the Downtown Master Plan Northwest Residential District, Context 1, also known as NWDRC1, and the surrounding uses are all residential. So this is a site photo of the vacant site and the surrounding properties. Here's the survey as provided by the applicant. And here is a site plan which shows the walkway to the front door, which is one of the elements that we look for in the historic districts, as well as parking in the rear along the alley. And it meets all the sections of the ZLDRs in this aspect. Here we have the proposed roof plan as well as the floor plan. I'm gonna leave that up for a little bit so you guys can take a look. We have the porch in the north end and the different bedrooms and closets and such throughout. Here's a proposed elevation. It looks pretty modern, but again, it's a modular home, so we're trying to see how we can work with the applicant to bring in some elements to make it more fitting for the historical neighborhood. And this is a slide with examples of what the built product looks like at different locations. And the staff's recommendation is approval with conditions based on the finding that the petition meets all of the required Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation in Section 94-49C3 and the additional criteria in Section 94-49C4 of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations. The conditions are below. Basically, we wanted them to add the architectural style of the proposed structure. We wanted it to mimic the mid-century modern and masonry vernacular architectural styles. Elements such as dimensional brick shall wrap around the base of the front and the side partially, and we do understand that the applicant has a little bit of pushback from that, so that's why we're here to have these discussions. And also other architectural features such as the addition of a decorative metal pole column or a breeze column block can be used to incorporate certain features present in the neighboring structures. The left window on the front elevation shall be a large fixed window with a horizontal 4-light pattern, anodized aluminum finish with pyramid muntins. All other windows shall be aluminum anodized horizontal 2/2 light pattern with external dimensional pyramid muntins. The front door shall be an architectural appropriate door. We recommended a metal screen door as well. The rear door shall be a paired or a single French door. The earth tone brick shall be added to wrap around the structure slightly to the side of the north and west elevations. And the brick shall stay below the window, and the west elevation option shall be the one with more than one window. And as discussed by the applicant before, there were certain constraints with meeting those recommendations. And that concludes staff's presentations.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Thank you. All right. Now we're entering into public comment. I have a comment card from Miss Araz. Okay, so if you'll just come up to the podium and state your name and address, and
She also sent us an email, which was provided as well.
thank you.
I guess our main concern is.
And just state your name and
sorry,
address for the
Anais.
record.
My full name is Anais with Poldados, and I live on 923rd Street, so very close. And I walk down 3rd Street every single day. And our main concern is that this will become more subsidized housing, essentially. There's already 3 subsidized houses, and if you walk by them, all you see is garbage all outside it. They make absolutely, I don't see how adding more subsidized housing is going to preserve the history of that neighborhood. It's very historically rich, and they just opened up a restaurant right down the street, and we want to see our neighborhood thrive and to go back to what it was when it was thriving prior to 1960. Before 3rd Street became 3rd Street, originally 1st Street. So that's our concern. We just don't think that it's productive for the neighborhood, for the residents, even for those living in the subsidized houses already on 3rd Street. We don't think it's productive to add a 4th. It's just going to continue being a ghetto, essentially, and we want to revitalize the neighborhood. That's what we want. So,
Thank you. And do you have any comment on the architecture that they're proposing?
no comment on the architecture. Just concerned about looking at the Signet Foundation, looking at their website, and we're just concerned that again this is just going to be another subsidized housing project on our street.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this case? You may come forward and take the podium. And again, if you'll state your name and address, please.
Hello, board members. My name is Jade Green. I'm the Deputy Director with the West Palm Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. I'm just here to advocate for the applicant. We did provide this land to the applicant with the intention of them to provide affordable housing within partnership with Palm Beach County Department of Housing and Economic Development to provide that tenant. This applicant has been very diligent in working with us and the Planning and Zoning Department to ensure that they're in compliance with all of our requirements. I just want to advocate for the CRA's support in this design and hope in some flexibility on what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So it sounds like this lot has been designated for this type of use through, okay.
Yeah.
And then a question for the attorney. The purview of our board does not relate to the use of the land. We're to review the architecture that's before us. Okay.
You are correct.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you come up to the podium? And if you'll just keep it brief.
Yeah, just my question is, as the Historical Preservation Board, it is in your interest that we preserve the neighborhood with its historic value, its historic architecture, and when you add subsidized housing, I mean, it's incredible that people will come and stand here to add a column to their house, and they do so because they care. When you have neighbors who have trash in front of their doors, they don't care. So I think it should be part of, like, you guys should be interested in this. It does affect you because if you care about preserving the beauty of historical neighborhoods and historical houses, then we should have residents and we should put houses in those neighborhoods that motivate and reflect that. So I don't know if you guys can give me maybe some guidance to who I can speak to, because it makes me very disappointed. And I'm impressed that people come here and that my neighbors wouldn't do this. So if you guys can, give me some guidance.
I would speak with your city commissioner. And I think your city commissioner is probably Kathleen Ward.
Okay. All right. Well then, thank you.
Yeah, and the purview of our board is just what, we're operating in. So this is already established, like what we're able to do or not do. And our attorney has been very helpful in making sure that we understand, the parameters that we can operate in. So we will continue to consider the architecture that's been brought before us. And with that, is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this case? Okay, thank you. And thank you for coming to the meeting. Right. Does the applicant wish to have a rebuttal to the public comment?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Lamont Humber, president of Signet Foundation. I just want to put you at ease, first of all. I'm not sure where you got the information that this is subsidized housing, but I'm glad you did your research, and I'm just reading from what you said here. I came across studies proposing various approaches to revitalizing a neighborhood like this. Some of the best solutions are your number one, credit-based homeownership programs to help working families and individuals. That's exactly what we're doing. So I'll be glad to speak to you afterwards to show you that we're using, it makes me sort of like, I own 2 properties here. We're not here for hot flashes. What you see is what we're taking care of. The only thing I ask, instead of taking pictures of that trash, call the sanitation department. Do the things that we've been doing to help the neighborhood also. I know you live here, but we do too. So I just want to let you know, guys, what you're concerned about is not what we're doing, all right? Thank you.
Yes. So, and if we could just make sure that the information is given to the neighbor so that she has the resources available to her, that would be fantastic. Okay, so we're closing executive session. I mean, we're starting executive session and closing public comment. Who would like to kick us off in our executive session? We don't often see modular housing come before us.
Yeah, I think my only comment was, there was something that was mentioned by the homeowner, concerned about the expense of having to wrap it in brick, which I think is a legitimate concern given the type of housing. And is there an alternative that we can find that maybe would be a little more budget sensitive that we would be comfortable with?
I think that there are alternatives that can be done in stucco, but that is also a cost consideration. Like, even though it's not as expensive, it's still an expense that I think would probably not it may also be cost prohibitive, is all I'm trying to say. I think I'm struggling with the confines of the modular housing and kind of this envelope that, you have a massive, I'm not even sure what to call it, if it's like a soffit or a fascia, but it's the roof structure expressed totally. That I don't know that there's a historic or a precedent for in the neighborhood. And I'm not really sure how to address the modular housing component, which I can remember one a very long time ago that came before us, and then meeting the Secretary of Interior standards. We don't have, it seems like there's not the flexibility with this type of building that we have in typically making conditions that could help remedy some of the stylistic concerns.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find words. I'm a little speechless. I hadn't seen modular housing, so the one that was on that you'd seen before was before my time, I believe. And I had countless phone calls when I was working, not in Palm Beach, in Miami Beach, about applicants wanting to do modular homes. And the process of going through a design review board and coming up with a creative, design appropriate, neighborhood contextual solution from a book was usually enough of a deterrent that those phone calls never turned into an application. I also inquired with the former historic preservation officer about maybe experience dealing with modular homes in the city of West Palm Beach. And she kind of relayed kind of the same experience that I had, that phone calls usually didn't turn into applications. So I respect the idea of providing that housing stock, and I think that anything is better than vacant parcel in a mid-block for revitalization efforts. But I do think that there's some design elements that if this was a different applicant, we would be giving it kind of a little strong review that I'm not sure where to land with that. Without adding complication to the fact of the applicant, if that makes sense.
I'm in the same place. I'm not sure what to. I think how we have to approach it is we have to look at this with our compatibility standards and the Secretary of Interior standards and determine if this new construction meets those or not. I mean, it's right, that's.
You have to evaluate
So
it.
the applicant's presentation said that they were able to meet I lost it. Four or five of the 8 recommendations. I think they said that. Okay, thank you. I think that maybe we give the benefit of them meeting those 4 and seeing what that shows. But because, can you go back to the 6? I'm sorry. Thank you. Because it seems like a few of them would dramatically change at least the street fronting facade, which is pretty, let's face it, the one facade we really care about. So those 4 things could be significant to change at least my reaction.
James, I think the roof line is what sets the tone for both of these structures, and to me makes them incompatible with historical neighborhoods. The changing of the window is not going to change the roof line. To me, it's the shape of that modular structure that disturbs me.
And Gerald, are you talking about the same thing that I was, like the profile of it, right? Because the simple gable of it, I think works, right? It's like the expression of, that's my primary concern as well.
Is there a possibility of another modular design that could be presented to us that might be more in keeping with the neighborhood? Because this is almost ultra modern to me. I'm not against the housing. I just don't think the design fits into West Palm Beach in a historical area.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you could have said it better. The design style is not even close, right? I mean, they're exquisite houses in this area. They are beautiful old homes in this area. Horizontal windows, I haven't seen it anywhere, right? It's not acceptable. Proportion of opening is not complying.
And
relationship of materials and textures, roof shapes.
So, Anne, you're pulling these up as
these are neighboring structures. Highlighting certain elements that I put in as conditions. So like the column, the brick wall, and then that privacy wall along, and just kind of shows you the existing roofs in the area.
Yeah, and something that's consistent with those is that roof profile is actually like a third of the, the size that we're looking at right now.
Was there a reason that staff didn't request a different modular, model?
This is what we were presented, and with modular structures, they're prefab, and you get what you get, right? So we're just trying to work with the applicant to, see what we can do.
Make the best of it.
Correct.
But are all modular designs contemporary? I've got to believe there's a classic model.
I guarantee that there's a simpler roof line that's probably less expensive and less designed than the one before us.
I'd like to add that the pictures that we showed was what the actual steel home manufacturer provided to us, which was primarily modular because it's popular. They did not have anything as an example that we could provide close to what was on the street. However, the roof line is actually just an A-frame. So if you look at the pictures there, that is the other builders getting creative to make those homes intentionally modern. The windows, again, if you're taking away those 3 windows in the front and you're just adding a simple window and doing a traditional A-frame, and then we're not having the brick, which I believe the brick technically would, in the way that the picture that we have, would make it more modern. So if we remove the brick and do stucco and paint, I think that would simplify the home and make it less modern.
Can we get a picture of what it would actually look like? It sounds like what the picture that you gave us is not actually what it's going to look like from what you're saying. Is that correct?
It's an example of the actual home, but it's another builder's preferences
Condition?
on what
Right,
paint
but is
and
it-
brick that they wanted to put on
But is
there.
it the same, like in other words, the one that you would build, you're saying has a different roof line? Is that, like, I feel like that's what you just said.
Can we put back?
Well, and I just want to be clear, it's the thickness of, and I apologize, I don't know what else to call it because it's not really a fascia board, but the fascia board and like that thickness, which looks like it's about a foot tall. If you look at the examples that Ms. Volsey showed, they're like a fraction of that. And so that's part of what we're concerned about, like the style, I don't.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
The fascia board it's not something that would be structurally, that's something that we could, adjust on our side, because what happens is the building is coming in raw and we're adding the stucco and actually finalizing the way that it looks. So it can look traditional, and that was our intention. So if you look at the actual plans of what the home will look like when it's built, you see there that slope, it's just the traditional A-frame slope. So we don't have to add all of those other features. It was just in the request for the COA application to include some of those pictures, and that's what the manufacturer was able to provide from their marketing materials.
So the A-frame with completely different windows would change dramatically what we saw today.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, so that's why I was saying, can we get an actual
Right.
visual representation of what it would look like?
Yeah, I think we need to have some sort of the board needs to see what's going on the property, not a manufacturer's photo of, I don't even know, like.
So what is the material of the roof, for example?
The material of the roof would be, it's a flat roof.
It's a flat roof?
Yeah, flat roof with shingles.
No.
And I don't know that
I
you
don't-
can do
there's
a 2 and 12.
So those are the options. And so with these, we're doing just a traditional shingle roof.
I kind of believe if you conveyed to this company, the modular company, some of our concerns, you might be able to come back with something that looks like it belongs in the neighborhood rather than this. There's nothing wrong with this, it just doesn't belong.
And I think that the precedent images that staff pulled, that, that style is appropriate, and the details, because that style is so simple, those details make that style. So it sounds like the board understands, the brick condition, but we have to make sure that stylistically we're meeting our precedents, and that's part of our compatibility standards.
Okay.
Okay, so I think it would be good to kind of summarize. It sounded like we were in favor of a lot of staff's conditions in regards to the window or fenestration changes that could be made, like that front one going to a larger, that resembles more of like a picture window instead of the 3 horizontal windows. I think we felt more leniency on the brick condition and understood that the roof detail is a major factor that needs to be addressed, and I think it would be helpful to see like what that detail actually looks like. I think that sections are required in the application. In the HPB application matrix, I believe sections are required, so I think we need to see a section to understand exactly what's happening. Is there any additional comment that our board would like to give just as a summary for the applicant?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
In addition to the staff.
In addition to staff's recommendations. Okay. So with that, can we have a motion, please?
I move the matter to, is 1 month enough for the team? I'm not sure of the turnaround time for deadlines.
Well, we could do a month and they can request a.
so I have a clear understanding, your question is how long will it take us to get this done?
Correct.
I'll try my best to get this done for the next meeting, in the next 30 days. So if we need extended period of time, we'll let you know. That's all going to depend on Steel Homes,
Of course.
the person who we get the information from. But we will do our best to have it for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, then with that, I move matter 25006, I'm sorry, 2505, this case to the March 25th, 2025 meeting with the
Second.
direction provided at this hearing.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. We will see you next month. All right. We are going to take just a 5-minute recess. One more.
Right now, because
Okay.
when we bring up our PowerPoint, and it's on here.
So we will now continue with our last case of the evening, which is case number 24-101 for 518 33rd Street.
Good evening. My name's Eddie Mole.
We'll speak into the microphone.
Yes. My name's Eddie Mole, and this is Nicole Van Lautenberg for that address property. And what we're hoping to achieve tonight is board approval on building a 2-story structure to replace the one that was there a long time ago, and to show that we have met the requirements of planning and zoning. And there were some concerns. So I have a PowerPoint here that shows that we hastily put together in the final hour when we found out that there were some concerns. So one of the things that we noticed when the concerns were presented to us was that the information that we provided was translated by AI. And as much as I love ChatGPT and AI, we can't let it make opinions for us. So what we're going to do tonight is try to clarify some of these concerns. So this is the site plan. The bottom piece is the existing structure, the smaller structure. The rectangle in the middle is the pool, and the red box shows where we'd like to put the replacement structure.
Currently, it's just grass there. So it was replaced with grass. There's a pool in the front yard, which is the only property in Old Northwood with a pool in the front yard. And then there is a 720 square foot home in the back currently, the current structure.
Okay, so one of the concerns was that we're 108 square feet over the limit, but we're actually not. When we reevaluated the floor area, we're okay. Here's the floor area. We're at 29.39%, but we could even do better than that if we minimize the pool deck, and we're willing to do that, but based on the numbers, we don't have to. So this is off of the district website. So if this is our goal too, to promote compatible additions with the new construction in high-density residential historic districts, with a pattern of large lots and primary two-story like this one, and some one-story buildings. So that's what we're trying to do. So this top one is an example of the frame vernacular style that the existing structure has. So one of the concerns was it doesn't exactly match the style, but it does. The difference is that the one at the top is wood frame, and this is a picture off of Wikipedia that represents the style of the house that the district is telling us our structure is. And they're right. That's what it is. It's just a basic, simple wood frame structure. What we're doing is we're just modifying and modernizing the structure of the structure, meaning that instead of wood frame, we'll go with block. Roof, similar. It's similar to adjacent structures. And this is what it would look like. These are some of the adjacent properties. And notice that they are stucco, they're low slope roofs, and they're a combination of colors. They're a combination of roof types, and a lot of them are two-story. In fact, several of the buildings that are very close to it are tall or taller than the structure that we're trying to build. Here's some more adjacent properties. You'll notice that many of them are two-story. Many of them are very, very similar to what we're trying to accomplish.
The one in the middle is the one that's next door to the home.
Mm-hmm. Right. Some of them are taller than the building. The mean roof height on our proposed structure is 20.5 feet. So this is the existing structure. The lower left shows what it used to look like a long, long time ago. And the big picture shows what that historic structure looks like today. And this is another view, different color. Due to the low camera angle, the house looks large, but it's only 32 feet wide. 32 feet by 32 feet, mean roof height 20 feet 6 inches. So it's not as large as it looks. Here's a view of the front, facing the street. And notice it's very, very similar to the picture we saw that represents that style of structure, of architecture. Now, for the windows, we think they're compatible, and they are, because that type window is on several houses in that immediate area. But if we need to add faux mullions, faux muntins, we're receptive to doing that, but it's still consistent with the design of the adjacent properties like it is. Another view of the back, okay, and that's a similar historic entrance. So that's all the pictures that we have, okay. I think that's it. So what we're asking for is a board approval for us to move forward, and then if there are any details that the city planners have, we're willing to work with them to to make it compatible. We've been working on this project with the staff for 8 months. All we're asking is to put a replacement building where one existed before and make it as compatible to the adjacent properties as possible.
Questions of the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd like to have the staff report now, please.
Again, Ann Volsey for the record. So the background, the house was built in 1949. It's known as the Arvilla CV house. It is in the historic single-family high-density residential Context 3 SF14 zoning district, surrounded by all residential structures. It is a contributing frame vernacular structure in the Old Northwood Historic District, and the existing structure is set back about 87 feet from the front property line. So to comply with the single-family residential zoning, a separate permit application would have to be applied for and approved for the removal of a stove inside this structure that is currently operating as the primary structure. So here we have the site plan, which shows the proposed new 981 square feet, two-story residential structure, as well as the 768 square feet for the existing structure on the site and the shed. So it meets practically majority of the zoning and land development regulations, except for the lot coverage. So the structure itself, since it's 2 stories, the FAR, so it's 2 stories, so it counts twice for that one as well, and then making it at about one moment. So the required or permitted is 2,023 square feet, and they're providing 2,131 square feet. And that's with the lot coverage exception that it's still exceeding. Here we have a floor plan, the proposed elevations, the rendering, and staff is recommending denial based on the findings that the petition does not meet all of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and the additional criteria in section 94-49C4 of the ZLDRs. So we have that for number 9, it may be that the new structure becomes a visual barrier for the contributing structure, so in the massing of it as well for the volume and the lot coverage not being met. And also we find that there are a lot of windows, maybe a little bit too many for the structure. So that's why we were pretty much recommending denial of the request. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Questions of staff? I have a couple. Was there a green card for the structure?
Yes, there was. I did not include it, but yes.
And on the green card, did it only have the structure that we can see now on it, or was there another structure there as well?
I don't believe to recall another structure,
Okay,
but this one is contributing.
yes, okay, and that contributing structure used to have shakes on it, on the walls?
Yes,
On the exterior
from what
walls,
I'm
which
seeing, yes.
have been replaced?
I'm not sure if there was
Or
a
removed.
permit for.
Damage to the shingles. There was water damage, and we got like termite damage, so we had to replace the exterior because it was actually damaging the interior of the house from water damage from the storm that we had in November, I believe, and we did stucco around, and we're applying for the permits. But it was an emergency that we had to replace the exterior.
Okay, so permits were pulled, but it didn't have a certificate of appropriateness with it?
I'm not sure what the certificate is. No, not for that. It was an emergent repair.
Can staff speak to that?
No, we haven't received any permits for the change
Okay,
on that principal structure that exists, no.
okay.
Are there additional supplemental documents for this case? Because I haven't seen it, or all the information that they submitted is in this presentation.
For, like, what, I'm sorry?
Like, for example, streetscape. Is there a street?
That was not provided, and that's why it was determined that we didn't have that to compare with the building heights in the neighborhood.
Okay.
But the applicant did provide within his presentation what that structure height would be and the images of the surrounding properties at 2 stories.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, it doesn't look like there's any public comment. Was there anything that was sent in for
No.
this? Okay. Would the applicant like to provide any kind of rebuttal to staff's report?
Yes.
You have just a couple minutes.
Are we counting the second floor for lot area? It doesn't change the lot area. It doesn't change the footprint or the amount of space, the buildable area. If we go by the calculations to, let's say it was a 3-story building, you wouldn't add that footprint 3 times to when you're doing your lot coverage. If we're adding the second floor to lot coverage, then yeah, we're a little over. The only thing we can do is make the buildings smaller. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is the shed still there?
The shed's a temporary structure. It's not, it doesn't, the shed, it's not a structure. It's just an old shed. It's an old metal shed just sitting there. It's not.
But it does count towards the.
Is that the hold on? I'll get rid of the shed tomorrow. Yeah, the shed can be pulled away and disassembled. Well, yes, okay. What I'm saying is the shed has no value and it's not being used.
But it does count towards it.
That might be our 108 feet then.
Okay.
If we get rid of the shed.
382 square feet for the shed. It's
So-
382 square feet.
Great.
For the
So
shed.
if we need 108 feet and we have 382,
So,
then we're good.
listen, this is a historic neighborhood,
Yes.
right? We are the Historic Preservation Board.
Yes.
And there are things that we need to see. And for what I am seeing, you are not complying with certain things. It's not just the lot coverage, which you are not complying.
Yes.
So you have to be in compliance. Otherwise, planning and zoning will not approve this project. Also, we are not complying with the building height, according to the staff report. Design style, you are not really complying either. I mean, the design, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a
Doesn't quite seem
box
to, yeah.
with few windows that don't even follow a rational pattern. It's not comparable with the surrounding properties, right? There is some sort of architecture that needs to be followed.
Okay.
Size, scale, bulk, mass, and volume partially comply, so doesn't comply. So there is a lot of work to do here. And we need to understand the relationship of this design with the neighbor properties. I mean, there are so many things that need to be changed here in order for, in my case, for me to be able to approve it, right?
Right, we need a complete application that has everything that's in the matrix that you should have to be presenting before the board.
We need floor plans, ceiling plans, sections, details, site plan, door schedule, window material, door materials, glass type.
Yeah,
We
and
have
it's all laid
provided
out
those.
in the matrix.
We have provided those and they're posted online. I thought that they had already been reviewed and approved. It says
Was
passed.
there a streetscape that was provided? Were there building sections that were provided? So not everything has been provided that's part of the design matrix.
Okay.
And the COA is fantastic. You know, it has several pages that lay everything out for you. You just need to go through and actually look at those requirements because they're exactly that. But I also think that, so that's one thing. But as a board, I think we also need to speak to the architecture, which you started getting into. But I think we should probably just enter into executive session for that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we're moving into executive session now. Gabe, do you want to continue or were you done with your commentary
Well, I mean,
on the architecture and the...
yeah, I don't see a rational design here. So it's a box that has a balcony that I don't even know what that means. Has what appear to be a sliding door, which we wouldn't approve, and doesn't have a logic. So basically, the relationship of voids to openings is not really complying with because there are so many windows and there are no solids, right? So voids to solids is not compliant, and there is no rational organization of the facade, right? There are windows on the ground floor that don't line up with the second floor, a door that is midway in between windows on the second floor. I mean, there is no rational organization of the facade to make it look like a nice house that should be a nice house. And we are kind of defending the applicant here because the applicant is not going to be proud of this design when this gets built if we approve this.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to pile on. It actually looks like a infill construction if there was no design review board. Two-story home, I'm allowed two-story home, comply with setbacks, okay. But contextually, if one were to think that that is the same as the neighboring property to the south, that is also 2 stories, and if one honestly believes that they're the same, I think it speaks more to the caliber of the design team that has been assembled. And I'm not being insulting, I'm really not, because I actually feel bad when I dealt with applicants similar that are just out of place when they are confronted with the design review board that has a different set of standards that construction or direct to permit paths in other municipalities have. It's almost not fair, because there is a set of je ne sais quoi that comes with streetscapes, and is it compatible and does it feel right, is it charming to the street, that aren't really in the building code or the permit or the zoning code. And it's almost as though the checklist needs to require a registered architect as part of it, and I've said this in another meeting, because this board is confronted with not wanting to be mean, and I'm sure staff, the applicant has been in the works for 8 months, they claim.
Yeah.
That can't be easy for anyone. But based on what we have, I see no other solution but to align with the staff recommendation for denial.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out one of the things that you said, which I think really hits home for this project, is the context and contextual nature of the buildings. So when we're looking at precedent images, we need to be looking at precedent images of contributing structures that are in the specific district that we're looking in, not just pulled, from whatever the frame vernacular is that, comes up when you search for that. So we're looking to find precedent images that are within the adjacent context. I think that the floor to ceiling, like the ceiling heights are, actually working well, which can be a struggle with some projects, but really the overall detailing, like none of that is pulling from the context that it should be relating to. I don't know how much detail we really need to get into with it.
My only comment was circling back to James, is that they've been working with the staff for 8 months, and to be this far off design-wise, that if there's clarity that we can provide while they're here, that might be helpful in steering them in the right direction, so that hopefully when they come back, we'll be able to approve something for them.
James, I think you were generous in your critique and pointed them in the right direction.
Okay, I will add to it, because if they've been working with staff for 8 months, I agree with you, Peg, that I have a lot of commentary, and I can give some of it if it would be helpful. As an architect myself, I do feel like sometimes you have to go to a design review board so that everyone can hear the feedback. So let's make it as constructive as possible. I'll just go ahead and get started since I'm already talking. But this house is not a frame vernacular house in any capacity. It's kind of like if anything, like a 2-story ranch, if that exists. I also can't think of a lot of precedents for that within the immediate context, but I could be wrong, and that's part of, showing us the precedents that you're working off of. The detailing goes back to a case from earlier that if you're proposing to do more of a vernacular house, then we need to see scaling and materiality that's consistent with that. I also think that whatever happened with the contributing structure and the shingles being taken off of was inappropriate, and it doesn't sound like it was done the way it should be. I'm not even going to touch that. That's up to staff and to handle that. But I do think that your proposed structure should take more context from what's already there and the style that's already there, that was a really key character defining feature, right? The shingles that are on the side, that's what made that structure so special. And so I think finding ways to reference that contributing structure instead of developing a new style for that, you already have a contributing structure that should be informing that style. The window openings, we like to see consistency, and window sizing, I would take your window sizing based off of the contributing structure you already have and not create too many new forms. But that being said, we don't want the same thing over and over. I think that's what makes it feel just like typical infill housing. And then the shutters have to cover the window. So the shutter sizing should be such that it could cover the window. And you can create bifolds and do fun things with it. But those are just a few of my kind of responses to this project. I think it would be helpful if anyone else has some.
I think you nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah, entry doors, for example, needs to be a certain style, right? That should be comparable with the style of a house.
I think we should continue it and give them the opportunity to try and correct it if they've been at this for 8 months. I think
if we continue it, what needs to be brought before us is substantially different. We have denied projects. Denial of this project feels like it would be in alignment with previous denials, and I feel like the point that you're making is they've been working with staff this long. but this application is not meeting any of our criteria and any of our standards. And it's not a, a month-long or a 2-month-long exercise.
So motion to deny then?
I think someone should try a motion and see how the board feels.
I move that the Historic Preservation Board deny application number 24-101 for new construction. The motion is based upon the testimony presented along with a staff report that competent substantial evidence of record has not been submitted that satisfies standards set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Section 94-49 of the City Zoning and Land Development Regulations. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, specifically standards 9 and 10, the additional compatibility criteria set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Right, the case is done. I don't know about the... So, and you can speak to staff about Mrs. Wolsey, about any of the questions that you have, and she'll be able to answer them. Thank you. Okay, and that was our last case of the evening. May we have a motion to adjourn?
I move the board to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.